Welcome back, and indeed welcome back to a rather special episode of Cinema Flicks Music Picks, in which, first of all, I'm at holiday camp, but second of all, I'm being joined by I may embarrass him by saying so, but legendary Jody Stevens himself from the Pretty Wrongs, who may be more familiar to pop legends, big star, power pop legends. Jody, how are you?
I'm great. Sitting here in Memphis, Tennessee, getting ready to go into Ardent Studios, as a matter of fact, where I've been working now since 1987.
And
I figured I've proved that I can hold a job.
the words I'm going into Ardent Studios has rather a few connotations for us big star fans. That rather excites us just to hear that. Jody's going into Ardent, even though he works there. It's still exciting to hear that. So such a big part of your history. So if you don't mind, we'll go back into the history. We won't go too much because my goodness, you must have talked about all this stuff a billion times over the years. But when you look back and see, and it's going to do this glady thing, but when you look back and see number one records, and when you look back and see Radio City, do you think of them as 50-year-old records? Or do you just see them as I do, to be honest, still alive and vibrant even today?
Well, I see them as still alive and vibrant in large part because the way John Fry started Ardent, and he was certainly our mentor. And without his generously making the studio available to us. And he taught Andy and Chris how to engineer, and Steve Ray, who was early on, and without all that, Big Star
Mhm.
would never have happened. We would have had no place to come together, and we wouldn't really have had a sense of purpose like we had. But it's vibrant, and because you listen to it and it still sparkles. It's because of a lot of factors. It, it helps to have great songs, and I can say
Mhm.
that because I wasn't one of the songwriters. It also helps to have players like Alex and Andy and Chris, and Chris and Alex's voices. But the kind of sonic uh, sort of magic is John Fry, and I think that's what keeps it alive and vibrant. And I think the fact that we do Big Star, we were doing Big Star's Third Live, and with a pretty big cast of folks. And then we did number one record out on the West Coast in LA as a fundraiser for autism. And that was a pretty big cast. But subsequent to that, we have a quintet that does number one record live. And that's Mike Mills, from REM, Pat Sansone from Wilco, Chris Stamey, and John Hour, of course, from Big Star, and the Posies,
Yeah.
and myself. And we did about 6 dates, I think, this past December. And we just booked three more dates in Spain.
Oh,
So that's exciting. So it keeps it alive for me.
and you mentioned a few gentlemen there, Chris Stamey and Pat from Wilco, both of whom are on the new record as well. So it's not just a celebration of a legacy, but is also feeding into the new music.
Indeed. Well, we're lucky to have those folks help us out. Chris did the string arrangements for the song Brother, My Brother. And he did the string arrangements for a song called Tonight, Tonight, Tonight on our Zed Pazula record. He's
Mhm.
just brilliant at it. I just said, hey, I'd like clarinet and flute to be featured and kind of flighty. And then Chris did the rest for Brother, My Brother. Um, and then Pat Sansone had added this brilliant Moog synthesizer part to Always the Rainbow, and then Mellotron part to Scream. And then, of course, Mitch Easter added a glockenspiel to the song, Paper Cup. So we're lucky to have those folks to draw on.
Yeah, no, it's a cast of characters to say the least. And when you look back at the first three records, and I say the first three because we'll obviously include, I mean, this is the European cover, which I don't think does much for the album, but Big Star's third. Three very different records, aren't they? I mean, I always think of number one record as a very crisp record. Number two, you hear a lot more, I think, of a band.
Yes.
And then, especially your drumming, I hope I don't. This isn't an insult. I think your drumming comes to the fore on the second record a lot more. You hear a lot more of your drumming on it.
Yeah, well, it's the nature of a three-piece versus a four-piece band. Yeah, our roles kind of changed a little bit.
Yeah.
As in ROLES,
Yeah.
as opposed to ROLLS.
Yeah.
But yeah, it made the second record a real a different kind of journey. But I think the thing is at the core of it all is Alex. You know, Alex, certainly Alex's songs. Although Andy wrote Way Out West, and he co-wrote like Back of a Car and maybe one or two other things.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a credit on Daisy Glaze, but you know, it's Alex's voice that sets the emotion of the record, and his guitar playing that sets the energy. So, and there was a lot of that on number one record. And then, you know, it goes from this, I think, a bit of innocence on the first record to a bit more life happening to you, and how you're, well, you know, it's a different kind of thing and a different kind of more of an adult life.
Yeah.
When we get into Radio City. And then third is just a bit of how life can be. For me, it's just it's an emotional release for Alex.
Yeah.
And exposure that he very vulnerable and very uninhibited in expressing it. I think that's why in part he never particularly cared to play songs from it.
Yeah.
When we play live, other than Thank You Friends.
Yeah.
And we play For You, of course, because that's something I did. But
yeah.
Yeah, in a way it's the evolution of a life.
Yeah.
With those three records. And then, you know, then you have years later with Johnny Kenner in the band, you have In Space. And
we're not forgetting about In Space. That's yes too.
yeah, and that's you know, Alex has a pretty cool sense of humor at times, and Love Revolution being one of them, and some other things. So
and Mine Exclusively as well. That great cover of the old song, Mine Exclusively.
Yeah. That was fun. We did it with Teenage Fan Club back in '93, and then the engineer on the project at the time, Adam Hill, said, "Hey, why don't you recut that, because we were looking for something else to do." And we managed to capture that same energy again, which was I was skeptical about us doing.
Yeah.
But we seem to be able to do that.
And you're right.
Yeah, it's hard to know who Big Star is without listening at least to the first three albums.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. There is even though they are often put together, and to be honest, I think that's because for a lot of people discovering Big Star, they did so through the Toofers, on the Ryko disc CD that put them together, and then the LP that put them together. So for a lot of people, they discovered those albums at the same time. Whereas you're right, tracks like 13, you couldn't just put that onto Radio City. It's a very different feel. There's a very, even though it's an acoustic track, it's a very naive song compared to something like, I know you didn't play drums on this one, but something like What Goes On, or even
What's going on?
yeah,
Yeah,
or even Life is White. Very different feel. There's a cynicism that's very Alex that's starting to creep in on that second record, and is all over the third.
sure. Yeah, truly, truly.
It's
I mean, but yeah, there's a cynicism creeping in there with Radio City and then third, but there's also still that there's a sweetness in the melody
yeah,
to
yeah,
what Alex is singing in his voice, but lyrically there's that little bit of cynicism, or maybe a lot, depending on how it strikes
yeah.
you at the time.
Yeah, I mean, when you get
Um,
something like Life is White and he's singing about, can't stand to see your face at all and things, it's very much he's not in the mood for a reconciliation of these relationships. Whereas on the first record, you can imagine those relationships may have a chance of getting back together. It's
yeah,
a wonderful dichotomy. And then on third, I've read the book on Alex, a man called Destruction, and I've read the Big Star book and the book on Chris Bell. Um, there's something on the third record that's very much pointing in Alex's solo direction with Flies and Sherbert and things like that. Not quite as extreme as that, or what he would do with the Panther Burns and things. But could you even then see that Alex was starting to move away from any kind of notion of pop music? I mean, he's got Jim Dickinson drumming on a couple of tracks, and Jim's doing drums that,
yeah.
to put it lightly, are not quite of your standard.
Well, that's what makes those tracks work so well, is
Mm-hmm.
the fact that Jim that's not Jim's primary
No.
instrument, and it's kind of wacky. But Oh Dana, and which I love, because in part because of Jim's drumming. It it's all so precarious
Mm-hmm.
and in a sense, I mean, that sort of mirrors everything else that's going on that Alex is singing about, and
Mm-hmm.
and the way he's delivering it. It's just kind of precarious in his guitar playing. It well, Kangaroo, Jim plays drums on that,
Yeah.
and Alex just handed him a tape and said, "Produce this, Mr. Producer." And I think Jim took that and added drums and all the feedback and all the wacky stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in part, Jim's interpretation of how to produce, an Alex vocal and guitar.
Yeah.
And it can get really wacky around it because you have the stability of a track that's already recorded. Um, so
And did you have
it
any?
was,
Sorry.
sorry.
Did you have any feeling at the time like, oh, this isn't quite for me because this is such a singular Alex and Jet, or were you just happy to go along with Alex's vision of whatever third Sister Lovers, whatever you want to call it, would become?
I was in it for the exploration,
Mm,
for the continued kind of journey that was Big Star, but also recording and being in the studio with John Fry, and then you introduced Jim Dickinson, and that made it all all the better for me,
mm,
because we now have a third party that we can look to, and which I was really grateful for. Jim was really supportive, and I could just go in and say, "What do you think about that?" or bounce things off of him, and not that I wouldn't have felt that way with John Fry, but it was nice to have another person in the room
yeah,
who might not have been in the room for the first two records.
yeah.
And Jim's he's got this great Jim Dickinson vibe to him.
Yeah, from
Uh,
what I know of him, from even other projects, he's worked with Bob Dylan and the like. there's only one Jim Dickinson, so I think
Yeah,
the Jim Dickinson vibe is the best way to describe it. Even in the documentary, the Nothing Can Hurt Me documentary, when we meet his wife, it's clear that even she's obviously sad to lose her husband, but you can tell that he's still alive. Jim Dickinson's
yeah, sure.
is never going to leave us. And speaking of which, do you look back on being the remaining member with melancholy, or do you feel like you're paying tribute to? I mean, what a horrible month. I mean, I'm obviously not old enough to remember when Chris died, but what a horrible month and a half or so, however long it was when we lost Alex, and then so soon after, we had the horrible passing of Andy as well. Do you
Yeah,
feel
it was a hard period. Certainly when I learned about Alex, I was down at South by Southwest and in the middle of the convention center, and his wife called, and I just kind of shut down and went and talked to my contact there, and who were very supportive. And then I just went back to the room and didn't do anything. I may have talked to John and Ken and about moving forward with the show and turning it into a tribute to Alex. But I didn't get online. I just kind of shut down. And then, Andy Hummel was there
yeah,
for that. And and we knew Andy had cancer and was dying. It was yeah, you just have to stay grateful for the time we had with him and the little time that I had with Andy at South by Southwest that year
yeah.
in 2010.
I mean, it was such a strange vibe that finally Andy has returned to the fold, and then Alex is gone, and then Andy's gone. It felt like, wow, we've got three members back, and then all of a sudden it's all gone. And but as you say, you've done everything possible, re-releases and contributing and to pieces over the last decade plus now. I can't believe it's been that long to keep the band's legacy alive. Not that it needs to; it seems to grow and grow, but to keep the band's literal legacy alive with releases of things. We've had that great box set and whatnot, the 4 CD set. We've had the documentary. So
We're lucky to have that support. Like Cheryl Pavelski put the box set together and continue to do some things with her label with Omnivore. So we're lucky there. And then Danielle McCarthy did the documentary Nothing Can Hurt Me, and really lucky there. John bought into that and supported it big time. And it took 6 years to get that documentary done, but thank God for that because so many people are gone now.
yeah,
I mean, Alex was alive when they were shooting it, and he toyed with the idea, or I think he toyed with Danielle about doing it, and then would just say, "No, I don't think so,"
yeah,
and then decline, and then I think maybe give her a little bit of hope and then decline.
yeah.
Uh, just kind of a sense of humor thing. So we're lucky there, and then Concord, stepped up and produced the Big Stars Third Live
Mm-hmm.
uh, performance that we did at the Alex Theater, and it just people lending a hand and wanting to lend that support. We've been lucky, and it just goes to it. It's really the emotional connection that the songs of Andy and Chris and Alex um, made with folks that they want to step in and support and be a part of something like that.
And I'd be very remiss if I didn't say Omnivore's release of the complete Chris Bell might be one of my favorite box sets that I own, the vinyl box set that they produced. I know you played a little bit
Yes,
on what would become I'm the Cosmos. You played on a couple of tracks, but it
I
tended to
played
be,
on three.
yeah,
Got kind of lost. Getaway with the slap back on the snare.
Mhm.
And there's one other, and I just can't think of it at the moment.
I mean,
I
for
didn't remember that I'd played on that many, but Richard Roseborough kind of pointed them out.
yeah, and Richard played on the tracks on Radio City that you
Richard's brilliant. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you can hear that one.
Richard played on Radio City.
Yeah,
Richard played on Mod Lang and What's Going On,
yeah,
and She's a Mover.
yeah,
And we tried to recreate that kind of energy and just couldn't. Richard's a special kind of drummer,
yeah, and
really, really cool, and he adds a sense of emotional depth to Chris's music that just, I don't think Chris could have had with anybody else
yeah. I
on
mean,
drums.
I'm on record as saying I think the greatest single cut that's ever been made is I Am the Cosmos on side A, and then flip it over and you get You and Your Sister, which two perfect songs, two absolutely
Yeah,
perfect songs. Just
truly.
yeah, magnificent. And my first, thank you for talking so much, Big Star. There, that was an absolute thrill. My first exposure to you was another kind of Wilco related project because it was Golden Smog, which obviously Jeff Tweedy was involved in. And scary to think that album is now as far in the past as Radio City was from your Big
At
Star.
the time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's crazy. Time flies when you're having fun,
Yeah, exactly.
I
That's the
guess.
main thing. So as we mentioned, you did obviously have Big Star in Space before that. This was 5 years before the untimely passing of Alex. You work at Ardent Studios yourself, as you've said, for good coming up on, was it 35 years, 36 years?
36 years,
Yeah.
yeah. And now Arden's undergoing a pretty massive renovation. A couple of the studio control rooms have been gutted, new consoles, just the whole kind of aesthetic of the place, and really, so much is going on with regard to renovations
Yeah.
that it'll be stellar when maybe done by the end of July or August.
Fantastic.
It's going to be stunning. We can see it emerging.
That's fantastic. So we'll follow that with interest. But then, of course, you joined up with your buddy, and that came out of, I
Luther
believe,
Russell.
yeah, and I believe that came out of, as we've been talking about, all the Big Star and whatnot, kind of reunions and playing.
It came out of the film Nothing Can
Yeah,
Hurt Me. Danielle asked me if I'd sing some songs at a theater in LA for the screening of the documentary, and I said
yeah.
sure, and I invited Luther along. I'd known Luther since probably 91. I met Luther a lot about the same time I met John Hour and Ken
Mhm.
Stringfellow. All of them introduced to me by Gary Gersh at Geffen. Um, so yeah, we got together and sang those Big Star songs, and Luther thought we should give writing together a try. And I thought, well, we might get 4 songs, but here we are, 32 songs later.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was going to say, never mind 4 songs. You'll be coming up on 4 albums reasonably soon. So first of
yeah,
all,
but definitely the three, and we have a new one written for the fourth.
Wolf, there you go.
But anyway,
Um,
it's yeah, having holiday camp out is incredibly thrilling because it uh, I can't believe we now have our third album out.
well, and indeed, I suppose it could have been called Those Pretty Wrongs, a third, couldn't it? But that may be a bit too self-referential. Not to
Right.
not to gloss over the. I mean, here's the twofer that was released for the first two. I love that you re-released these with an old school. Double the prettiness for price of one up on the up in the corner there. That's very old school kind of style. So you get
Right, yeah.
the original album and then sorry, the original album and then Z for Zulu. Two
Yeah,
fantastic.
all covers done by Luther, by the way.
Yeah, fantastic covers, very vibrant. Even the black and white ones still got a vibrancy to it. But with the music and with the cover, which people can see behind me, but I hold the LP up anyway. I think you've topped yourself musically and artistically with the cover as well. Holiday Camp, 10 tracks, produced by yourself and Luther. Um, First of all, I love the cover. I just absolutely adore. I mean, people see it behind me, but it very much sets the tone for the record because it is a holiday camp, but there's a little bit of melancholy kicking in the edges there as well.
Yeah.
It's sunny and vibrant, but it kind of has a little bit of not darkness. It doesn't go that far, but it's certainly got a little bit of wistfulness. I'd say would be the word I'd use.
Yeah, I agree, agreed. I we the name of the record came from watching Peter Jackson's version of Let It Be film.
Mm-hmm.
Um at one point John Lennon's talking about coming back from India and having been at holiday camp. And I thought, oh, that sounds great. I need to, we have a lot of Beatle references in our music,
Yeah.
and so now we have an album title that was inspired by John Lennon's.
I was wondering because it's a kind of British term, whereas you guys have summer camp, where the kids get
Right.
sent off. So holiday camps over here are a kind of version where the whole family go for atrocious meals and what passes for entertainment in these places. But yeah, so I mean, the songs on. I'm never going to get this with the Zoom thing the way it is, but the songs on this. I mean, New September song to kick it off. What harmonies! That is an Everly Brothers like harmony thing going on there. That is unreal for an opener.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'd sing lead, and Luther creates these amazing kind of harmonies. Uh, and well, Luther also helps out with melody lines too,
Mm-hmm.
and well, not to mention lyrics. I might be the primary lyricist, but Luther certainly contributes lyrics. And a New September song, I actually he sent over the title, and I've got this New September song, and I'm not sure it was a title or if it was new was an adjective to September song.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but he said, "Why don't you write some lyrics for it?" Um, so I was sat down and wrote. Uh, the frogs of a summer night sing, and bonfires illuminate the trees, layered ribbons of a cool, cool breeze. Uh, it and then when I got to the chorus, I thought, wow, this song's coming together. And then it dawned on me that I could just sing, and this New September song is coming on.
Yeah, yeah,
About it's we're getting there with this.
yeah,
And so that's what I did.
and
Um, the sultry summer breeze uh, is
yeah,
a drug. I don't know. Yeah, it's funny. You just kind of start into this kind of journey, and all the input from my years on Earth kind of comes out in lyric lines. Um,
and this album's full of these kind of lyric lines. I mean, to do pop music is one thing, but to do instantly catchy pop music is quite something else. After one listen, people will remember these. I mean, I was literally singing Scream just in the shower after one listen. I was already and I'll scream, scream, scream,
yeah,
scream. It's so infectious, all the lines, all the melodies, and Ride Along has that quality as well. I'd say definitely Paper Cup, which is the most retro sounding I'd say on the record. There's a little bit 60s vibe going on there. It sounds like something that could be on the Nuggets compilation or something. It's vibe. It's very cool, very cool. I mean, do you tend to think of individual tracks? I mean, did you paint them as such, or did you think of this will be good for the album, or were you just coming up with songs?
I don't have that luxury of thinking this will be good for the album. We just start writing songs, and when we get 10, it's okay, we have an album. And it's, I don't, and we don't talk about direction either, really. It all just happens and it is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, because Luther's a full-time musician and everything and player and writer and he's a solo artist in his own right. But I don't have the luxury of being that flexible or talented to do anything other than this whatever comes out at the time.
Other than write these wonderful songs, sing, other than produce, you don't have many talents, and yeah, we some of us are rather jealous of those talents, to say the least. And
Well,
vocal,
I have Luther Russell. Luther, produces the music and we both do have certain production things, but foundationally, it's Luther. I don't know. We have ideas about. Well, Luther comes up with it musically, and it has a particular energy about it, and then we just carry on with that energy and
yeah,
that feel, or the lyrics might dictate, or like "Brother, My Brother." It's a song about my younger brother David, and it's kind of a tragic song. It is it was a sad ending for my brother, um, but I wanted something flighty and that represented more of the good spirit that he had. So that's when I got Chris Stamey involved and with a flute and a clarinet and said make it flighty. I We both contribute, but I think at the end of the day, Luther probably does at least 60% of the production or something.
I wasn't going to I
But
wasn't going to mention.
it's the good thing about us is that we bounce ideas off of each other so um, casually that it's sometimes it's hard to figure out who did what.
Yeah,
But it's just us. It's the two of us. That's who did it.
and as
Yeah.
you say, you've got that friendship for 30 years plus. That means you can bounce them without fear of offense. I suppose it's an actual friendship rather than
Ex-
just a working relationship.
sure.
Yeah, I wasn't going
Yeah.
to mention brother, my brother, but you did. I have my twin brother passed away of COVID. A couple, well,
Oh,
so we've been through similar experiences in losing my brother, and I have to admit, when that came on, I just burst into tears. It was
yeah.
quite the experience. But as you say, it's not a requiem. It's a celebration of. I mean, there are literally lines in it about uh, invincibility getting in the way of it and things, and it's really a celebration of what you brought to me rather than what I've lost through losing you. And it's a yeah, it's a powerful song to say the least. It really is.
Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so yeah, yeah, quite something. Ram and Ram, if not eye to eye. We didn't fit like a glove. I mean, anybody who's lost a sibling and then thought, oh, I wish I'd have done this slightly different, or said a few more things. But yeah, powerful stuff. So thank you for that. And rather poignantly, the next track's then called "I Will Remember." So that's what we do is remember. But we won't end on a
Yeah.
slightly melancholy note. I've read in various interviews and books and even the documentary, you don't tend to think of your place in history. You don't, when people say, "How does it feel to be on the Rolling Stone 500 songs list and things, and blah blah blah?" You don't tend to think of it as you tend to say, "Well, that's for others to decide, and that's for viewer listeners and whatnot to go into. And that was my first question, really coming around back to my first question. You do think of them as still fresh and vibrant records, but do you ever give a sense or a thought to an idea of legacy or of how it will all be remembered now that you're the last man standing, as it were, of Big Star?
I I don't think much of legacy. I think a lot about uh, kind of what's ahead and what I'm doing now.
Yeah,
And I mean, of course, it's doing number one record live that we'll do in Spain. It's a very I don't know. It's a very soft, gentle way of remembering Alex and Chris and Andy. Um, I mean, that helps because the music is so. I felt lucky all my life to have been part of that
yeah,
and part of that kind of relationship with those three guys, and just like I feel with you know uh, having played with John Auer and Ken Stringfellow and but I continue to play with John Auer, and then certainly Luther Russell. It's in that bond that comes on, but it's I feel lucky to be able to sing those songs and be in the company of the folks that I am when we perform those songs. It's like holiday camp.
yeah.
What can you?
Well, when you get to, you say how lucky you feel. When I listen to your drumming, and especially on a track like "Oh My Soul," um, I think they should have felt lucky for playing with you because some of your drumming is out of this world. And "Oh My Soul" is one of those tracks. The time signatures are just all over the place. It's brilliant stuff. Um, radio set is
I
one.
gotta, yeah, I'm proud of that one. But again, it's a response to Alex's opening guitar line.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, whoa, get up and go.
Yeah,
Here we go. It's
yeah, yeah,
we've launched,
yeah.
and so it's pretty much a response to that, and some of the stuff that I'd done in the previous year. I'd taken this little percussion class and I changed drumsticks and I'd gotten a new drum kit, first oversized Ludwig kit that Ludwig put together in 1972, and I still have that. Um, and it just the sound of that kit and the sound of those particular sticks hitting the drum and the way John Fry recorded them, it if it was just inspirational. So it just kind of stepped up. Um,
And as you said, you even got the vocal on that record. You got to do "Way Out West," which, oh, I love that song to bits as well. That's a favorite of mine. She's a schemer.
yeah,
She makes me. Oh, every
yeah.
single time. That's such a.
There's such an innocence to India song and Way Out West, Andy songs. Back of a Car, I think Andy contributed uh, some of the lyrics to that. Um, that was just, Andy was a pretty vulnerable guy when it came to playing music, I think.
Yeah, very raw nerve. You can kind of hear through the music.
Yeah,
And to it's the old George Harrison issue, isn't it? Where when you're in a band with Alex Chilton and Chris Bell, it's always going to be difficult to get any of your stuff to the fore, isn't it? But yeah, Andy managed it, and you got to do it with Way Out West. You got to.
yeah, yeah. And then I got to, contribute one to third. It's not like, For You was the first song I'd ever written, really. And then Andy, I don't think he had a he had a catalog of songs that had backed up. I think he with India song. I think he just sat down and boy, it's the most magical of escape songs, the
Yeah,
India song. But I think he did that for the record, and I think he did Way Out West for Radio City.
yeah,
Um, I'm not. He never mentioned having other songs that he'd written, or
amazing.
which now I'm kind of. I could kick myself for not asking if there were other songs.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, I mean, if we have the complete Chris Bell, it'd be great to know that there was other Andy compositions out there. That would be
Yeah,
something. I'm sure there's. Oh, and obviously, all fans would love to hear. I mean, we've got this wonderful gig from the Lafayette Rooms, but
right.
I'm sure every fan would also love to have a record of the Chris lineup. We'd love that. Really, that's the Great White Whale. If anything could surface for that. Uh, we always want more, don't we? That's the curse. Jose,
It's true.
thank you so much for coming on and talking about this stuff. This has been
Glad to
wonderful.
do it. And where are you, David?
Glasgow, Scotland, late teenage fan club. So
Yeah, awesome. Lee, we're playing. It's close. Luther and I are playing. It looks like we're going to be playing Liverpool. Um, we've played 2 dates in London at the Troubadour, and then we play Newark.
mm-hmm.
It's just east of Nottingham.
Yeah.
And it looks like we're going to play Liverpool and either Oxfordshire or Bath. But I'd really hope to get to Glasgow, but we'll save that for next year.
Oh yeah, I mean Powerpop's massive in Glasgow, hence Teenage Fan Club.
I know.
So yeah,
Yeah.
you'd go down an absolute storm. Before I go, can or before you go, can I be really self-indulgent and ask you to say hello to my good friend Ryan, who's a massive fan. Just
What's his name?
Ryan.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Hi, Ryan.
He's got his second EP.
Hello from Memphis, Tennessee.
He's got his second EP coming out next week, so we're all wishing him well for that. So a fledgling musician and a massive Big Star fan. So
Oh, wonderful. That's cool. Well, I
yeah,
wish him well. I
so
good luck to him.
that was
So
self-indulgent, but he wouldn't talk to me again if I didn't. So, Jody, thank you so much for this. Congratulations on what have I put it now? Congratulations on. To be honest, I think it's the best of the three so far. I don't know if you have a personal favorite or think of it that way, but this has
I
been
think it's an evolution. I
yeah,
think it helps to define who we are. And
yeah,
I think each record's important, just like, with Big Star and the 70s records.
yeah.
But yeah, we couldn't have gotten to Holiday Camp without going through the self-titled and then Zed for Zulu. Um,
Well, I'm going to be doing a series on the channel
you just keep.
where I'm going to be doing a series on the channel where I go through not just the Big Star albums.
See,
I'm going to be doing all the solo related projects, the complete Chris. I'm going to be doing Alex's, even his weirdest EPs and whatnot. And we'll be doing
yeah,
your stuff with Golden Smog and your stuff with Luther and whatnot. So it's going to be quite an adventure in the next year or so. So very much looking forward.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So.
Well, hey, I better run, get to work.
Well, I better
It's
let
been
you
a
run and
pleasure.
get to
Thank you
work.
so much.
Jody, an absolute honor. So all the best with the studio refit, and thank you once more for coming on.
Yeah, and so look for those pretty wrongs in September, probably starting around September 12th through about the 22nd in the UK.
September 12th, do so much.
Yeah,
So,
right.
thank
And
you.
this new September 12th song is coming on. Right? How
Yeah.
about that?
I'll get this posted. I'll post links to the new album so people can tune in and buy it and support you live and on records. And Jody, thank you once again. It's been an absolute honor.
Glad to do it.
Pleasure.
Thanks for your interest. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.